A pleasant day to everyone. For this lesson, I'm going to discuss about the performance management process or the PMP. Now, in the end of this lesson, you can understand the performance management is an ongoing process that includes the interrelated components of prerequisites, performance planning, performance execution, performance assessment, performance review, and the performance renewal and reconstructing. And also, you can conduct a job analysis to determine the job duties, knowledge, skills, and ability, or what we call the KSAs, and working conditions of a particular job. We can also write a job description that incorporates the KSAs of a job and information on the organization and unit missions and strategic goals. And we can understand that the poor implementation of any of the performance management process components has a negative impact on the system as a whole. And we can also understand the dysfunctional or disrupted link between any of the performance management process component has a negative impact on the system as a whole. We can also understand some important prerequisites needed before a performance management system is implemented, including the knowledge of the organization's missions and even the strategic goals and knowledge of the job in question. We can also distinguish a result from behaviors and understand the needs to consider both in PMS. And also, we can describe the employee's role in performance execution and distinguish areas over which the employees has primary responsibility from areas over which the manager has a primary responsibility. We can also understand that the employees and even the managers have the responsibility in performance assessment phase. And you can also understand that the appraisal meeting involves the past, the present, and the future. And also, even the similarities between the performance planning and performance renewal and recontracting. And also, we can create results and behavior-oriented performance standard. Now, let's talk about the performance management process. By the word process, meaning this is what we call ongoing. Now, performance management does not take place just once a year. Performance management, again, is a continuous process, including the several components. And these components are closely related to each other, and the poor implementation of any of them has a negative impact on the performance management system as a whole. Now, these are the components. First is the prerequisites. The second step is the performance planning. The third step is what we have, the performance execution. The fourth one is the performance assessment. The fifth one is we have the performance review. And for the last is the performance renewal and reconstructing. Now, we're going to discuss this one by one. Let's start with the prerequisites. Once we talk about prerequisites, we have here the two things to be implemented. First is the knowledge of organizational missions and strategic goals, and the second one is the knowledge of a job in a question. Meaning, we need to know what is the strategic planning process. This strategic process have contains of the mission and even the vision statements of a company. Having this one, we have clarification about how they can define their purpose or reason why the business is existing, where it wants to be in the future, the goal it wants to achieve, and the strategy it will use to attain these goals. So once the goals for the entire organization have been established, similar goals cascade downward with departments setting objectives to support the organization's overall missions and objectives. The cascading continues downwards until each employee has a set of goals compatible with those of the organization. The second important and prerequisite before the performance management system is implemented is to understand the job in question. This is done through a job analysis. Job analysis is a process of determining the key components of a particular job, including activities, tasks, product, service, or even the processes. In job analysis, this is a fundamental prerequisite of any performance management system. Why? Because without this, it is difficult to understand what constitutes the required duties for a particular job. If we don't know what is employees is supposed to do on the job, we won't know what needs to be evaluated and how to do so. As a result of a job analysis, we need to obtain some information regarding the task carried out and also the knowledge, skills, and the ability, or what we call the KSAs. This is required of a particular job. Knowledge includes having the information needed to perform the work, but not necessarily having done. In skills, it refers to required attributes that are usually acquired by having done the work in the past. And also, we have the ability. This is refers of having a physical, emotional, intellectual, and even psychological aptitude to perform the work, but neither having done the job nor having been trained to do the work is required. The tasks and the KSAs needed for a various job are typically presented in the form of job description or the job brief, which summarize the job duties needed, KSAs, and working condition for a particular job. Now, let's have here an example. So, this job description or job brief is about the job of accounting supervisor. So, as you can see there, the job is definitely managing about the financial function, including the payable or receivable, or even about the conciliation of the bank or how to audit taxes. So, whatever the candidates that they may have in terms of accounting supervisor, all the details are here already. Now, in job analysis also, it can be conducted using observation. Why? Because somehow, in doing a job, the managers or even the employees can evaluate all throughout what is the necessary skills for a specific task. Job analysis also can be conducted using the off-the-shelf questionnaires or interviews. Data are collected for the job increment. Example, those doing the job of the president and their supervisor. Alternatively, if the job is not yet to be created, data can be gathered from individuals responsible for creating the new position and those who will supervise individual in the new position. Why? Because sometimes in business or sometimes in doing a specific task, there are some positions that need to be created. Why? Because the process will not be smooth. So having this kind of newly position can definitely help to have a fast moving process in the operations. Job analysis also can be conducted by observation method. True observation methods include job analysis, watching equipments to do the job, or even trying to do the work themselves, and then producing a description of what they have observed. This method can be subject to biases. Why? Because job analysis may not be able to distinguish important from unimportant tasks. Such analysis may not be suitable for any job or for many jobs. For example, a job analysis could not do work for a police officer for safety reasons or the work of the software programmer for a lack of knowledge and skills to do the work. So here in our example, if you don't have any familiarization about the job, you cannot do it. You cannot give your best. Why? Because you are not familiar, you are not used to it. And also, the off-the-shelf methods involve distributing questionnaires, including a common list of tasks or the KSAs, and asking individuals to fill them out, indicating the extent to which each task or the KSAs is required for a particular job in question. So these generic off-the-shelf tools can be practical, but they may not capture the importance of the jobs out of the mainstream. In interview, this is important, or this is a popular job analysis method. During a job analysis, interviews are very popular. job analysis method. During a job analysis interview, the job analyst asks the interviewee to describe what he or she does or what individuals in the position do during a typical day at the job from the start to finish. Example, the step-by-step process. Alternatively, the job analyst can ask the interviewee to describe the major duties involved in the job and then ask them or her to break down these duties into a specific task. So once the list of tasks has been compiled, all the necessary duties should have an opportunity to review the information and rate each task in terms of frequency and critically. So now here we have the scores for the frequency and also the critically. So as you can see, we have here the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Same thing with the critically. For 0, not perform, meaning they don't perform it frequently of a specific task. And also we have 1 every few months to yearly. The second one every few weeks or to monthly, or every few days to weekly for 3. For 4, every few hours to daily. And for 5, hourly to many times each hour. And for critically, 0 meaning not critical, 1 low level of critically, second below average level of critically, third the average level of critically, the fourth is above average level of critically, and the fifth is the extremely critical. Now, rating both frequency and critically is necessary. Why? Because some tasks may be performed regularly. Example of the task of accounting supervisor. The task is about account payables and receivable. Let's say we have 4 for frequency. Why is it 4? Maybe because all throughout or in a daily basis, they have collection. And also for 0, since a certain individual, since the position is supervisory, automatically they are used to the job. So that is 0. And the result is 0. So now, what is the connection of this 0? So considering frequency scores alone would have given us the wrong impression that making accounts payable and also accounts receivable is a task that deserve a prominent role in a job description. So overall, scores for all tasks can be ranked from highest to lowest to obtain a final list of a task. Now, in evaluating this one, we have the things to be considered. Why? Because is an important component of a good job analysis is a rater training. In other words, there are several biases that can affect the accuracy of the information provided by the individuals regarding KSAs needed for a job. So we need to consider the 2 biases. So the first one is the self-serving biases. So this kind of bias leads to people to report that their own behaviors and personality traits are more needed for successful job performance compared to behavior and personality traits of others. So this because people tend to attribute success to themselves and failure to external causes. Example, the factors outside of their control. And the second one is the social projection and false consensus biases or bias. The social projection bias leads people to believe that others behave similarly to themselves and hence lead people to think about themselves when reporting KSAs for their job instead of people in general. So, having a false consensus bias is similar in that it leads people to believe that others share the same beliefs and attributes as themselves. Taken together, self-serving, social projection, and false consensus biases affects job analysis rating. Why? Is it because they lead people to believe that their own KSA are those driven success on their jobs. So this led to an exaggerated view regarding the KSAs needed, and this exaggeration is based on the precisely the KSAs that a job necessary responsibility must have. Another thing is we have the job description. Job description are the key prerequisites for any performance management system because they provide the criteria. Criteria meaning to say we have the yardstick that will be used in measuring performance. Such criteria may concern about the behaviors. Behavior example, how a certain employees perform or results or what are the outcomes should result from the performance. So this criteria usually falls into one of the following category. First is the quality of their job or the quality of their task. Second is the quantity. So meaning if a certain employees or the account supervisor have a lot of output in a daily basis or in a quarterly or even or even a yearly manners. And also the cost effectiveness, meaning all the resources are distributed equally so that they can have an optimum results and timeliness. And here are the examples of our responsibilities and the requirements and the skills for the accounting supervisors. So as you can see, these are the prerequisites of an accounting supervisors in terms of their responsibilities, requirements, and skills to determine their job duties by having a specific knowledge, skills, and also ability. The second step is we have the performance planning. In performance planning, employees should have thorough knowledge of the performance management system. In fact, at the beginning of each performance cycle, the supervisor and the employee meet to discuss and agree upon what needs to be done and how it should be done. So this performance planning must discuss includes a considerations of both results and behavior as well as the development plans. So once we talk about results, it refers to what needs to be done or the outcome an employees must produce. A consideration of results needs to include the so-called key accountabilities. This one has a broad areas of a job for which an employee is responsible for producing result. This information is typically obtained from a job description. A discussion of result also includes specific objectives that the employee will achieve as a part of each accountability. Objectives are statements of important and measurable outcome. Finally, discussing result also means discussing performance standards. A performance standards, again, is a yardstick used to evaluate how well employees have achieved each objective. In here, performance standard need to provide information about the acceptable and acceptable performance. So again, example, we have the quality, the quantity, the cost, or even the time. Next is we have the behavior. Once we talk about behavior, it includes competencies. Why? Although it is important to measure result, an inclusive emphasis on result can give a screw or incomplete picture of employee performance. For example, for some jobs, it may be difficult to establish precise objectives and standards. For other jobs, employees may have control over how they do their jobs, but not over the result of their behavior. For example, the sales figures of a salesperson could be affected more by the assigned sales territory than by the salesperson's ability and performance. Behavior, or how a job is done, thus constitute an important component of planning phase. This is probably why results from survey indicated that in addition to sales figures, salespeople would like to be appraised on such behavioral criteria as communication skills and a product knowledge. Another consideration of behavior, again, behavior includes competencies which are measurable clusters of KSA that are critical in determining how results will be achieved. Third is the development plans. that should include identifying areas that needs improvement and setting goals to be achieved in each area. Development plans usually include both results and behavior. Again, in performance planning, it must include the consideration of results and behavior, the development plan. This discussion of results needs to include key accountabilities. Example, broad areas for which an employee is responsible in terms of a specific objective for each key accountability, which again example is the goals to be reached and performance standards, or what constitutes acceptable and unacceptable level of performance. This discussion of behavior needs to include competencies. Again, it's about the cluster of KSAs. And finally, development plan includes a description of areas that need improving and goals to be achieved in each area. Once the prerequisites are met and the planning phase has been completed, we are ready to begin the implementation of the performance management system. This include performance execution, assessment, review, and renewal and recontracting. Third is what we have, the performance execution. Once the review cycle begins, the employees strive to produce the results and display the behaviors agreed upon early, as well as to work on the development needs. Employees' participation does not begin at the performance execution stage. However, as noted earlier, employees need to have an active input in the development of job description, performance standards, and even the creation of rating form. In addition, at later stages, employees are active participants in the evaluation process in that they provide a self-assessment and the performance review interview in a two-way communication process. At the performance execution stage, we have some factors to be presented. Came from the employees and also came from the manager. From the employees, first is we have the commitment to goal achievement. An employee must be committed to the goals that are set. One way to enhance commitment is to allow the employee to be an active participant in the process of setting the goals. The second one is ongoing performance feedback and coaching. The employee should not wait until the review cycle is over to solicit performance feedback. Also, the employee should not wait until a serious problem develops to ask for coaching. The employee needs to take proactive role in soliciting performance feedback and coaching from their supervisor. The third one is the communication with the supervisor. Supervisors are busy with multiple obligations. The burden is on the employee to communicate openly and regularly with their supervisors. Fourth, collecting and sharing performance data. The employee should provide the supervisors with a regular updates on progress towards goals achievement in terms of both behaviors and results. And for the last, preparing for performance review. The employee should not wait until the end of the review cycle approaches to prepare for the review. On the contrary, the employee should engage in an ongoing and realistic self-appraisal so that immediate corrective action can be taken if necessary. The usefulness of the self-appraisal process can be enhanced by gathering information, performance information from peers and customers. They are both from internal and external environment of the organizations. Although the employees has primary responsibility for performance execution, the supervisor also need to do his or her share of the work. In fact, monitoring the performance of colleagues has been identified as a key competencies by the Management Standards Center. Supervisors have have the primary responsibility over these issues. First, observation and documentation. Supervisors must observe and document performance on a daily basis. It is important to keep track of example of both good and poor performance. Second, updates. An organization goals may change. It is important to update and revise initial objectives, standards, and the key accountabilities in case of the results and competencies area in the case of behavior. Third is the feedback. So this one is a progression toward goals, and coaching to improve performance should be provided on a regular basis, certainly before the review cycle is over. For the fourth one, we have the resources. Supervisors should provide employees with resources and opportunities to participate in developmental activities. Through, they should encourage to participate in training, classes, and even having a special assignment. Overall, supervisors have a responsibility to ensure that employees has the necessary supplies and funding to perform the job properly. And for the last is the reinforcement. Supervisor must let employees know that their outstanding performance is noticed by reinforcing effective behaviors and progress towards goals. Also, supervisors should provide feedback regarding negative performance and how to remedy the observed problem. Observation and communication are not sufficient. Performance problem must be diagnosed early, and appropriate step must be taken as soon as the problem is discovered. Next is we have here the performance assessment. In this phase, both the employee and managers are responsible for evaluating the extent to which the desired behavior has been displayed and whether the desired result has been achieved. Although many sources can be used to collect performance information, example came from our peer or came from our subordinates. In most cases, the direct supervisors provide the information. This also includes an evaluation of the extent to which the goals stated in the developmental plan have been achieved. It is also important that both the employees and the manager take ownership of the assessment process. The managers fill out their appraisal form, and the employee should also fill out their form. The fact that both parties are involved in the assessment provides good information to be used in a review phase. With both the employees and the supervisors are active participants in the evaluation process, there is a greater likelihood that the information will be used productively in the future, specifically the inclusion of the so-called self-rating. This helps emphasize possible discrepancies between self-reviews and the views that importance others. Example came from our supervisors have of our behavior. It is the discrepancies between the two views that is most likely trigger development efforts, particularly when feedback from the supervisors is more negative than our employee self-evaluations. The inclusion of self-appraisal is also an important additional factor in performance assessment. Why? Because self-appraisal can reduce an employee's defensiveness during an appraisal meeting and increase the employee's satisfaction with the performance management system, as well as enhance perceptions of accuracy and fairness, and therefore acceptance of the system. Again, in performance assessment, both employees and the supervisor must evaluate employee performance. Employee involvement in the process increases employee ownership and commitment to the system. In addition, it provides important information to be discussed during the performance review, which is the next step. In performance review, stage involves the meeting between the employee and the manager to review their assessments. This meeting is usually called the appraisal meeting or discussion. The appraisal meeting is important. Why is it? Because it provides a formal setting in which the employees receive feedback on his or her performance in spite of its importance in performance management. The appraisal meeting is often regarded as the Achilles heel of the entire process. This is because many managers are uncomfortable providing performance feedback, particularly when performance is deficit. This high level of discomfort, which often translates into anxiety and even the avoidance of the appraisal interview, can be mitigated through training those responsible for providing feedback. The final stage, the renewal and the reconstructing stage, uses the insight and information gained from the other phases. For example, some of the goals may have been set unrealistically high given an expectation economic downturn. This would lead to setting less ambitious goals for upcoming review period. The performance management process includes a cycle which starts with prerequisites and end with the performance renewal and reconstructing. This cycle is not over after the renewal and reconstructing stage. In fact, the process starts all over again. There is a need to be discussed about the prerequisites, including the organization's missions and strategic goals, and even the job of the KSAs. Because market change, customer preferences, and the needs also change. The product also change. There is a need to continuously monitor the prerequisites so that performance planning and all the subsequent stages are consistent with the organization's strategic objective. Again, in the end, one of the main goals of any performance management system is to promote the achievement of the organization wide goals. Obviously, if the managers and employees are not aware of these strategic goals, it is likely that the performance management system will be instrumental in accomplishing the strategic goals. Again, this is Miss Jero. Thank you so much for listening.